Hi, my name is Sarah Philippi, and I'm going to be performing a monologue adapted from the book In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I'll be playing Susan Kidwell. We were like sisters, at least that's how I felt about her, yeah. For the first few days, I couldn't go to school. I mean, neither did Bobby Rupp, though, and, for a while, Bobby and I were always together. Not like that. Yeah, but Bobby was, Nancy's boyfriend back in the day. Yeah. Um, he was a good kid, he has a good heart, but nothing ever really terrible had ever happened to him before, like losing someone he loved. So I felt bad for him. And then on top of all of it, having to take a lie detector test. I'm not saying he was like bitter about taking the lie detector test, but you know, he had a good heart, and it was a shock to him that life wasn't one big old basketball game. So, oh, we drove around in his old Ford a lot, up and down the highway, out to the airport and back some days when it was really rough. But some days, every once in a while, we went out to the Creamy, which was an old drive-in right down the street, and we would sit in the car, order a Coke, listen to the radio when neither of us had anything to say ourselves. So one day he looked at me and he goes, I'll never love another girl other than Nancy. And honestly, I missed her too, yeah. She's my best friend, she's family to me. But I'm sure Nancy wouldn't have wanted that, and so I told him so. So the next day we went and kind of paid our respects. We visited it in a way. I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was a Monday. We drove over the bridge that overlooked the Clutter House. Oh God, it was so beautiful. Mr. Clutter's wheat fields going away, and the apple orchards, and the strawberry fields, and in one of the fields, though, they were having a bonfire. And they were burning things from the house. Everywhere you looked, there was something to remind you of what happened. So, fishermen fishing on the banks of the river, but Bobby, being Bobby, said that they weren't fishing for fish, but they were fishing for the murder weapons, the knife and the gun. It doesn't matter to me who did it. What matters to me is why they did it. Whatever way you want to spin these tables, nothing is ever going to bring Nancy back. Nothing's ever going to bring any of them back. And it was a while ago, I guess. But no, who could do something like this to somebody like Nancy? All she ever did was bring joy and peace and love into the world. I just don't understand. Like, God. There's this one day, actually, we were walking home from school, and she saw this was about 2 weeks before the incident. She saw this little boy crying on the side of the road, and so naturally she stopped. She asked the little boy what happened, and he explained how he fell and he scraped his knee while he was skipping, and all of his friends just ran off. So Nancy, being Nancy, kissed the wound better, piggybacked him all the way back to his house. And by the time he ran through those doors into his mother's arms, he was laughing and smiling and just so happy, and I miss that. I really miss that. Another day we were driving around and watching sheep go by, pretty much. So Bobby looks at me, he perks up and he goes, we ought to go see Nancy. We ought to go be with her right now. And so we drove all the way down to Main Street to Garden City, to the funeral home. Yeah. No, but Bobby's kid brother was with us, and he was starting to explain how all of the kids in Holcomb didn't have school the next day because of the funeral, so they can all go. And then he was explaining to all of us how all of these conspiracy theories that these kids had about Nancy and what happened, and how they were so convinced it was the work of a hired killer. And, you know, I really didn't want to fucking hear about it, right? So it was no, it was lies, and it was gossip, and it was all this bullshit that Nancy hated. So of course I'm gonna shut him up about it. Sorry, just still pisses me off to this day. Anyway, when we got into the funeral parlor, caretaker didn't want to let us in. He said nobody could see the family except for the family. And Bobby had a way of words, so he got us in, and I really wish he hadn't now, but there were 4 coffins in the flower-crowded parlor. I couldn't bear to look at the rest of the family, but I made myself look at Nancy. I felt like I owed it to her. And honestly, if you didn't look at her head, it was as if she was just resting. They put her in her cherry red velvet dress, and I love that dress. I remember how much she loved it, but her head was covered in cotton, twice the size of Christmas tree fluff that you would put up on a mantle. And then they even sprayed it with this glossy substance so that it kind of shimmered. But I needed air probably 2 seconds into that whole situation, so I ran out the back door and I sat on the steps and I watched this guy raking leaves and burning them. Kind of reminded me of the bonfire on the Clutter farm. But you know when you watch without like really seeing? That's what I was doing, because I thought if I closed my eyes I'd faint. So all I could think of is Nancy in that dress. Oh God, I remember when she designed that dress herself. I helped her go out to the fabric store and pick out the fabric, and she sewed that dress. It took her 2 hours to sew the dang thing, which is amazing. And then the night she wore it out for the first time was at a party. It's where she met Bobby at that party, and they hit it off really, really well right away. I remember she was dancing and dancing the night away. That's one memory I'm probably never going to forget, is that cherry red velvet dress and Nancy in it, dancing.